الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله فإن الله تعالى مع المتقين وبعد. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has given us many examples in the Quran that we should be reading on a regular basis. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has informed us about various nations and their end results. And with some nations, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has gone into detail. Allah has informed us about the people of Ad, the people of Thamud, the people of Ibrahim alayhi salam, those whom he came into contact with. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has informed us about the Sahaba, in fact. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has informed us about the people around the Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, and so on and so forth. But there is a particular people whom Allah has mentioned time and time again throughout the Quran. And we find that their example is given over and over again. In fact, when we read the Mus'haf that we have in our hands today, we find the first chapter of the Quran. At least half, if not 2/3 of the first chapter are telling us about this particular nation, Banu Israel. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us detail after detail about incidences which took place within the history of Banu Israel. Why? We're going to look at this particular question. Why does Allah inform us about them? But before that, let us remind ourselves of some of the highlights that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us in relation to Banu Israel. And bear in mind, this comes after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala categorizes for us mankind into three: believers, non-believers, and hypocrites. Three: believers, non-believers, and hypocrites. As has been said from this minbar before, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not categorize us into black or white or Arab or Asian or male or female or this tribe or that tribe. No, believer, non-believer, hypocrite. Those are the categories that will be raised on Yawm al-Qiyamah. And for those who have any affiliation to any other type of category, you have a problem. If you affiliate to a people because they are white, because they are black, because they are this tribe or that tribe or Asian or this color or that color, then you have a problem. And just on that point, ask yourself the question: if you associate yourself to people because of color or because of tribe, look at the wicked from amongst that people. Look at the wicked from amongst the white, or from amongst the blacks, or from amongst the Asians, and ask yourself, are those your people? Do you want to be raised with those people in Yawm al-Qiyamah? Allah gives us three: believer, non-believer, hypocrite. After that, who does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us detail about? Allah tells us about the creation of Adam alayhi salam. And then immediately after, Banu Israel. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, amongst that which has been mentioned, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informs us that He gave preference to Banu Israel over all other nations. How so? Allah granted them prophecy. Allah raised from amongst them the prophets. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them kingship. Allah gave them dynasties and power and wealth and control. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He informs us about how they were saved from Fir'aun, where the men, the males, were being slaughtered and the women were being kept upon the last strings of life. Why? So that they could live a life of servitude to the people of Fir'aun. And the Mufassirun, the scholars of Tafsir, they inform us that it's not only Fir'aun who was a tyrant, but the people of Fir'aun as well. They were a tyrannical people. They were a harsh and coarse people against the people of Banu Israel. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved them. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informs us about the fact that they were given the Tawrat, a book of revelation. A book of revelation. And that's the greatest gift that we can receive in this life: guidance, hidayah, guidance. A greater gift than health or wealth. Allah gave them a manuscript of guidance and selected them to be the people of guidance, the inheritors of guidance. What did they do? They turned their backs away from the guidance. Musa alayhi salam, he went with the best of them. He came back and he found, what were they doing? Worshipping a cow, worshipping a golden calf. And this is after they have been saved from Fir'aun. They've seen the signs. They've seen the destruction of Fir'aun. They have literally seen the Red Sea part and the army of Fir'aun drown in front of their eyes. Musa alayhi salam left them for 40 days and they take a golden calf as a god besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What else? Allah Azza wa Jal, He tells us that they were given the chance to seek forgiveness. They were given the opportunity of forgiveness. And whilst that was taking place, murder ensued. There was murder amongst them. Again, Allah gave them the opportunity for forgiveness. Allah gave them a place to abide and instructed them to say a particular word to seek forgiveness, but what did they do? They changed the word, they altered it in arrogance and haughtiness. Again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgave them. And Allah Azza wa Jal instructed them to find a particular cow, offer it as a sacrifice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What did they do? They started to play games. What is a cow? We don't know what a cow is. What is it? What color is that cow? There are many cows. Tell us the color. And through questioning, they made it so difficult for themselves. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us that they were close to not being able to fulfill that which they had been instructed to fulfill. Why? Because of their own questioning, making their own lives difficult. Again, Allah Azza wa Jal forgave them. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructed them to enter into the promised land. And what did they say? To Musa alayhi salam, فَاذْهَبْ أَنْتَ وَرَبُّكَ فَقَاتِلَا إِنَّا هَاهُنَا قَاعِدُونَ. They refused. Why? Because there was a people they referred to as Jabbareen. There was a difficult people abiding therein. And so they said to Musa alayhi salam, you and your Lord go and fight, we're going to stay here. Imagine. You and your Lord go and fight, we're going to stay here. During that time, when they were walking the land, etc., Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala still provided for them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala covered them with clouds to protect them from the sun. They're roaming the deserts, the barren lands. Allah covered them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent upon them al-man was-salwa, a sweet type of food and a meat. What did they do? They complained. They complained. We cannot be patient upon one type of food. Oh Musa, ask Allah to give us more. Ask Allah for onions and garlic. Lack of gratitude. And fast forward, Allah Azza wa Jal, He tells us, they took an oath with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are not to kill each other. You are not to slaughter each other. You are not to go to war with each other. You are not to kick each other out of your lands. What did they do? What did they do? They did the exact opposite. They took alliances with those who they considered at the time to be non-believers, pagans, idol worshippers. They took alliances with them and they fought against each other. Al-Aws wal-Khazraj. And they fought against each other. And they killed each other. And they kicked each other out of their own lands. Does it sound familiar today? You have Muslims kicking other Muslims out of their lands in the name of nation states. Lines drawn by who? By non-Muslims. Lines drawn by non-Muslims. And then you have Muslims kicking other Muslims out of those lands. It's jahl. But who are we becoming like? Banu Israel. And why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell us about them? It's not so that we can look at those people and look down upon them. Look at these people that existed. Arrogant. It's so that we can reflect over ourselves. Allah Azza wa Jal gives us the reason why. What is the reason? And of course, that was brief, very brief, only from the first chapter of Surah Al-Baqarah, and then a little portion later from the Quran. And if you read through the Quran, they are mentioned time and time and time again. Why? What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? What was the problem of Banu Israel? What was the underlying issue? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ اشْتَرَوُا الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا بِالْآخِرَةِ. That's it. أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ اشْتَرَوُا الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا بِالْآخِرَةِ. Their problem was what? Dunya. That was their problem. Dunya. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, they are the ones who purchased what? This life. For the price of what? Their akhirah. That's the underlying issue. Dunya, dunya, dunya. And look around us. Look around us. And what are we engrossed in? What are we engrossed in? And a person, when they think of dunya, when they think of this worldly life, they might think dunya is money in your pocket. Dunya is a nice watch on your wrist. Dunya is a nice car that you drive. Dunya is a nice home, a nice roof over your head. Dunya is the woman on your side. No, that's not dunya. That's not dunya, that's a part of dunya. Dunya may simply be comfort. Dunya may simply be comfort. Your dunya may be you sitting at home, broke, streaming something on TV, seeking some comfort. That's dunya too. Al-Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala in his Ihya, he says, the one who seeks ar-rahatul haqiqiyya, actual comfort, real comfort in this life, he's seeking something that does not exist. You are seeking something that you cannot find because Allah has not created it. It's like a person spending their entire life looking for a unicorn. A unicorn is a beast of myth. It's not a real beast. It doesn't exist. It's like a person, every time they see a rainbow, they're trying to find the end of it, assuming they're really going to find a pot of gold. It's a myth. It's a story. Likewise, comfort in this life is a myth. It's a myth. It's non-existent. You will not find it. And the more you search for it, the more depressed you are going to become. Why? Because you are constantly going to be let down. You are constantly going to be let down. This dunya is what? يَوْمٌ لَكْ وَيَوْمٌ عَلَيْكَ. It's a day that goes for you and a day that goes against you. تِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, those days of power, those days of power. Today we see the Muslims are in a state of perceived weakness. But not tomorrow. Not tomorrow. Why? Because power alternates. Power alternates. No nation is powerful forever. And we can look to the graveyard of great nations that preceded us and we can find evidence of that. Where is Qawm, Fir'aun? Where are the Romans? Where are the Byzantinians? Where are the Ottomans? Where are the great nations that came before us? They've gone. And tomorrow, new nations will stand. Power interchanges. Life does not stay the same. Today you will find comfort, tomorrow you will find difficulty and hardship. That's the nature of life. Therefore, the one who looks for comfort in this life, the one who seeks it out, the one who's running after it, they are like the horse chasing the carrot on a stick. They will never catch it. The carrot has been placed there to give the illusion that you are going to catch it if you keep running. That's the whole point. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us, what is this life but what? Deception. Deception. It's deception, this life. But we run after it. We run after it. If I have a new coat, that's going to make me feel happy. If I have a bit more money, it's going to make me feel happy. If I have status, it's going to make me feel happy. If people fear me, I'm going to be content. If I have a nice woman, I'm going to be happy. If I have more children, I'm going to be content. If I have this car, I'll be comfortable. No. The moment you will find happiness in this life is when you turn away from this dunya and you give it up in your heart. That's when you will find happiness. Because this life cannot give you happiness. Giving it up is where happiness has been found. Has been found by those who came before us. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله وحده وصلوات ربي وسلامه على أشرف الأنبياء ومن تبعه وبعد. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala on the issue of depression and happiness. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he says that depression comes from two things. Two things. Find yourself in one of these two. If you are depressed, find yourself in one of these two. Depression comes from love of dunya or from deficiency in your relationship with Allah Azza wa Jal. That's where depression comes from. And the likes of Ibn al-Qayyim and Imam al-Ghazali, Ibn Jawzi, Ibn Rajab, these individuals, they were doctors and psychologists of the heart and the mind and the soul long before the arena of psychology existed. And today, when we speak about depression from the mental health perspective, We are talking about it from within a framework that does not recognize the soul and the spirit. A framework which does not recognize the need for a person to have a relationship with his or her creator. And so the framework itself is problematic. Why? Because the framework is looking for reasons for depression within an area where the reasons may not necessarily be found. And Ibn al-Qayyim, again, he says, if you are depressed, reassess your relationship with the dunya. A person has been working their whole life. Why? Because they want a mortgage. They still haven't got a mortgage. How do they feel? Low. They look outside, they see people with nice cars. They look at their car which is not as nice. How do they feel? Low. They scroll on Instagram or whatever other medium of choice that they use to rot their brain. And how do they feel? Depressed. Why? This person is traveling the world. This person is eating out. This person is happy with their friends. In reality, those people are lying. Those people are lying. They're miserable. But they take nice pictures and they give off this image that they're happy. But they're liars. Lying to themselves before they lie to others. It's illusion. The age of image over substance. If a person looks like a gangster, he's assumed to be a gangster, even though inside he's not. A person looks like a scholar, he's assumed to be a scholar, even though inside he's not. It's about the clothing, the day and age of imagery. That's what dunya is, deception. Deception. So don't be fooled by these people. You wake up, you look outside, you see something someone has that you don't have. You feel upset. Depression. Why? Dunya. Dunya. Or you wake up in the morning, you haven't prayed Fajr, you feel low. You feel low. You feel something. What's wrong with me? Why do I feel like this? You haven't created a relationship with your Lord. That's why you feel like that. I have everything in my life that I should have, and I feel depressed. Why? Do you have Allah? Do you have Allah? Depression. This dunya is not a place of qarar. It's not a place of residence. And when we look to the state of our ummah, the only issue that we have, the only issue, the one and only issue that we have is love of dunya. That's it. Love of dunya. The difference between us and the Sahaba was what? The Sahaba gave up this dunya for the sake of the akhirah. We acquire this dunya in the name of akhirah. In the name of akhirah. We halalify the pursuit of this dunya. And we assume that we're doing good things. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, "Inna dunya halwatun khadiratun, wa inna Allaha mustakhlifukum fiha, fanadhirun kayfa ta'malun, fattaqu dunya wattaqu nisa." The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, this dunya is green, luscious and sweet. And Allah Azza wa Jal has placed you herein, and He is looking at how you interact with this place. Are you running after it or are you giving it up every day? As the Prophet ﷺ, he said, every person when they wake up in the morning, بَائِعٌ نَفْسَهُ فَمُوبِقُهَا أَوْ مُعْتِقُهَا. Every single person when they wake up in the morning, they are selling themselves. Either they are purchasing this life for the sake of the next, or they are purchasing the next life for the sake of this. That's the reality of the dunya. And the Prophet ﷺ, he then went on to say, so protect yourself from this dunya. Protect yourself from this dunya and protect yourself from who? From women. Men, protect yourself from women. Do not assume yourself to be strong. Do not assume yourself to be aloof from the temptations of women. No, you are weak. If you are a man, you are weak. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us that. وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا. Man has been created in a state of weakness. Some of the ulama, they say it's his weakness to women. And in Europe, they used to say that the woman can touch the man that the devil cannot come close to. It's not to suggest that a woman is a wicked person, no. The woman is his weakness. The woman is his weakness. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, the first fitna that struck Banu Israel was what? The fitna of what? Women. That's the door to the dunya. That's the door to the dunya. And so we have to understand ourselves. We have to understand where we are. Those who leave this life, they do not come back. We only have one chance. We only have one chance. And once it's gone, it's gone. And so we have to take it seriously. And when we look to the situation of our ummah, when we look to what is happening in the world today, if we really want to make a difference, the way that we can make a massive difference is by giving up this life. By giving up this life, turning away from the dunya. By turning away from it. We live in the age of commodification. Everything is being sold. In order to sell something, you have to entice someone. How do you entice them? By working on their desires. And so, desires are going to be justified in this place. Advertisements are speaking to our desires. That which we watch, speaking to our desires. Money is being spent trying to condition us to follow our desires. And so it's very easy to fall into this lifestyle of dunya. The dunya that we have at our hands is unprecedented, not seen by any nation that has come before us. And the best thing we can do if we want to be a part of those who change the state of our ummah is give up this world. Give up this life. Give up the dunya. Attach to Allah Azza wa Jal and the akhirah. And in doing so, we prepare ourselves to be used by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the victory that has been promised. As those who Allah uses to give victory to Islam and victory to the ummah of Islam, they will be those who are detached from this life, not those who are running after it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala detach our hearts from this dunya and use us for the sake of Islam and for that which is pleasing to Him. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Warda Allahumma an Abi Bakr wa an Umar wa an Uthman wa an Ali wa an sa'ir sahabati ajma'in. Allahumma tub alayna wa afu anna إنك أنت العفو الكريم. اللهم استعملنا ولا تستبدلنا يا رب العالمين. اللهم انصر إخواننا في فلسطين وفي أنحاء العالم يا رب العالمين. اللهم ارفع راية الإسلام وجعلنا من الرافعين له وأقم الصلاة.